Okay, let's just drop right into the middle of a massive, universe-shaking cosmic war. Today, we're exploring sections 19 through 24 of the Astika Parva from the Mahabharata. And we're picking up the narrative right after the absolute ultimate prize has been pulled from the ocean, the Amrita, the literal nectar of immortality. Now, as you can probably imagine, when immortality is suddenly on the table, absolute chaos ensues. So let's dive into how this epic fallout actually begins.
Picture this. The gods and the Asuras are violently clashing on the shores of this massive saltwater sea. It's so brutal they are literally painting the mountain peaks red with blood. The text describes these alarming sounds ringing out everywhere. Shouts of cut, pierce, at them, hurl down, advance. Thousands of warriors are just striking one another with sharp iron missiles, swords, darts, maces, the whole shebang. The great Asuras are falling in such massive numbers, totally drenched in gore, that the dead bodies actually look like red-dyed mountain peaks scattered across the earth. It's intense. And then, even Narayan and Narayana enter the fray. Narayana summons his Sudarsana discus, and this weapon blazes like the fire that consumes all things at the end of time, drinking the lifeblood of its enemies and reducing towering rocks to literal dust.
So things happen fast here, really fast. Amidst all this raging battle, Lord Vishnu pulls off a total strategic masterstroke. He transforms into a stunning enchantress, distracts the Danavas, and snatches the Amrita right out of their hands. Well, while the terrified gods are eagerly drinking the nectar, a really cunning Danava named Rahu slips into their ranks in disguise. But just as the nectar touches his throat, the sun and the moon recognize the imposter and shout a warning. Reacting with blinding speed, Narayana hurls his blazing discus and cleanly beheads Rahu right on the spot.
But here's the crazy part. Because the Amrita had just barely reached Rahu's throat before the discus hit him, his severed head had already become immortal. The text describes this enormous mountain-sized head rising up into the sky, letting out these dreadful cries, while his headless trunk just crashes to the ground, shaking the entire earth, its mountains, and its forests. And ever since that fateful day, Rahu's severed head holds this bitter, unending grudge against Surya and Soma, the sun and the moon, for snitching on him. So he chases them across the sky, and when he catches them, he swallows them, which according to this narrative is exactly what we're observing during a solar or lunar eclipse. It's a pretty wild origin story to think about the next time you're looking up at an eclipsed sky, right?
Now, notice how the narrative suddenly zooms way in, scaling down from this massive cosmic war to a deeply personal, incredibly high-stakes wager between two sisters. On the one side, we have Vinata, and she is fully confident that Uchai Shravas, which is this magnificent celestial horse churned out of the ocean, is entirely white. But her sister, Kadru, smiles and insists that, nope, the horse definitely has black hairs in its tail. They agree to go examine the horse the very next day. But the stakes they set for this? They are massive. Whoever loses this bet will become the literal menial slave of the winner. It is a terrifying, all-or-nothing gamble. And this right here brilliantly illustrates a ruthless chain of cause and effect karma. Because Kadru is determined to win, no matter what, she hatches a deception, ordering her 1,000 snake sons to transform themselves into black hairs to cover the horse's tail. But when the snakes refuse to participate in her lie, a furious Kadru pronounces an exceedingly cruel curse. She dooms her own kids to be consumed by fire in the future snake sacrifice of King Janamejaya. And shockingly, Brahma and the gods actually approve of this curse. They see it as a necessary form of population control for these dangerously venomous snakes that have been multiplying all across the realms.
Anyway, before the sisters can even go check the horse, they have to cross this absolutely terrifying ocean, which the text describes with incredible, dread-inducing detail. They fly over this vast, unfathomable body of water that is just packed with horrible, monster-shaped aquatic creatures and fishes large enough to swallow whales whole. It's an ocean that roars tremendously, with rolling waves that seem to dance like uplifted hands. And it's not just water, it's the home of Aruna, the habitation of the Nagas, and a reservoir containing literal subterranean fire. The text even drops this detail that the great Rishi Atri tried to fathom its depths for 100 years and completely failed. This is the perilous, awe-inspiring world our characters are navigating.
So back to the snakes. The terrified Nagas hold a consultation and realize that if they don't do what Kadru wants, she might just burn them immediately or withdraw her affection forever. They realize they're in a lose-lose situation, so they cave. They go to the celestial horse and actually transform themselves into black hairs in its tail. When Kadru and Vinata finally cross that terrifying ocean and arrive to inspect the steed, the deception is complete. Vinata looks, and she sees the black hairs. Deeply dejected, she loses the wager.
In an absolute instant, she goes from a free woman to a state of absolute servitude, enslaved by her own sister. But then, out of nowhere, Vinata's son hatches without her help, and this creature bursts forth from his egg with a body that is effulgent, like a literal heap of fire. He's roaring fiercely and increasing his size until he ascends to the very skies. The gods are completely overwhelmed by his terrifying splendor. They rush to the fire god, Agni, in pure panic, crying out, "O Agni, extend not thy body. Wilt thou consume us? Lo, this huge heap of thy flames is spreading wide." They literally think the apocalypse is happening.
Agni basically has to tell them, guys, calm down. That's not me. He explains they are actually looking at Garuda, a magnificent being whose birth is literally shaking the heavens. Agni tells him not to be afraid, explaining that this is the mighty son of Kasyapa, born to bring joy to Vinata. And the kicker, he is the destined destroyer of the Nagas, those exact same snakes that just enslaved his mother. Realizing their mistake, the gods approach Garuda from a distance and begin to worship him. They call him the creator of all, the lord of the universe, pure knowledge itself. They beg him to diminish his terrible blazing form so they can just regain their equanimity. And hearing their pleas, the great bird mercifully shrinks down his size and energy.
But just as Garuda is born and things seem to settle down, bam, another cosmic crisis. Suddenly, the sun, Surya, decides he is going to scorch the entire universe to ashes. The text tells us that in the middle of the night, this great heat springs up, striking terror into every heart and threatening to totally destroy the three worlds. The gods and rishis are thrown right back into a panic. They rush to the grandsire, Brahma, asking why this unnatural destructive heat is occurring before the sun has even risen. What could possibly push the vital, life-giving sun to seek the total annihilation of the world?
Well, it all connects back to the very first story we covered. Remember when Surya snitched on Rahu for drinking the Amrita? Because of that, Rahu's immortal head begins this relentless campaign of revenge, constantly trying to devour his afflictor. And here is where the tragedy really hits. Surya realizes he brought this enmity upon himself by trying to help the gods. Yet when he is constantly being attacked, the denizens of heaven just quietly watch. They do absolutely nothing to help him. Feeling completely ghosted and abandoned, a furious Surya retreats to the western mountains, resolving to radiate a lethal heat to just destroy the very worlds that refuse to stand by his side. To prevent the destruction of the three worlds, the grandsire Brahma assures the panicking gods that he's already got a fix. He calls upon Aruna, the intelligent, huge-bodied brother of Garuda. Garuda, using his incredible speed and strength, carries his brother across the great ocean. Aruna is positioned right in the east, directly in front of Surya, to act as his charioteer just as the sun rises. By doing this, Aruna's massive, radiant body acts like the ultimate sunblock. He perfectly veils the sun, absorbing and taking away all of that lethal, vengeful energy. Thanks to Aruna stepping in, the welfare of the worlds is ensured, and all of creation breathes a massive sigh of relief. But it really leaves us with a lingering thought. When even the gods and cosmic forces are driven to world-ending wrath over unresolved grudges and perceived slights, what does that say about the very nature of this ancient universe? This series presents the Parvas of the Mahabharata in their original sequence, without altering the core narrative, to make the story easier to understand. Join us in the next explainer as we explore the next sections.